Hello and welcome back to Everyday Writers, your one-stop shop for demystifying the writing process. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal McQueen.
And I'm your other host, Jordan S. Keller. Today, we're doing an in-depth episode about plot and how to hook your readers so they'll be unable to put your book down. Before we dive in, though, click that subscribe button and give this episode a big thumbs up. Your support keeps us going. So, to jump right into things, what is plot? To break it down, plot is a sequence of events that occur within your story, creating tension, drives your character development, and showcases the conflict. If you remember from our last episode, there are 6 conflict types, and you need to include at least one, multiple or better, in your story to make sure it's not boring and to give your character something to fight against.
Yep. And if you remember another episode that we did about incorporating tension, there was 7 tips to incorporate tension. That is another thing that helps drive your plot. And so one of the things that we talk about is like what makes a good plot. A good plot is something that, keeps you interested, keeps you engaged, keeps moving forward. There's different things that you consider a good plot versus a bad plot. Like different people enjoy different things. Um, there was a movie I watched called Three Billboards Over Missouri. It's a
Hmm.
Coen Brothers film.
Oh,
Loved it, even though like the plot was there, but it was just so bizarre that I couldn't look away. Versus I also watched a movie called Certain Women, I think.
mhm.
And it was 3 hours, and at the end of it, I was like, what did we just watch?
Hopefully, you're
Uh,
watching it at home and you could get up and get snacks and stuff.
it was assigned as a class. It was one of the
Oh,
movies we had to watch in a class, and we had to talk about like the plot, and I was like, I'm pretty sure there wasn't one,
and they're like, that was the point of the movie.
I guess. So what do you think, Jordan? Like talk about some of your favorite plots. Like what do you think makes a good plot?
Yeah, for me, it's like I the first example that comes to my head is J.C. Denon's third book in the Legendborn cycle, Oathbound, and in it, like the main part of the story is the character needs to get here, and every time they take a step, they have to take 2 steps back, step forward, 2 steps back, and so you're constantly needing to like, when are they going to get there? But
Yeah.
there's that real delicate balance between just being obnoxious and keeping them from achieving versus like a successful back step. And the way that I try to incorporate it in my writing, there's a game series called Hades out, and it's a roguelike. So every time you die, you have to restart from the beginning.
Mm.
But right. But every time you like every run you do, you pick up little bits of information that make your next run better. And so every time like my character takes 2 steps forward and they get pushed back one, I need to have them have a small victory. Maybe they've learned something, maybe they've gained a connection with another character. So that way, like this constant pushback feels almost rewarding. Like it's definitely not rewarding for the characters, but rewarding for the reader to be like, we're not there yet, but it's okay. We've gotten the school object, we've gotten the school piece of information.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
yeah.
about the book Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow.
Mm.
And for me, it's taking the most interesting part of people's lives, the 2 main characters' lives, and that's what we're seeing. So we see them as kids, when one of them is in the hospital and one of them is volunteering,
Mhm.
and then you see them as college kids and how they've changed and the different things that are influencing them in college, and then you see them go into business together, and how that works out, and then you see the falling out, and then you try to like see the reparations, and I don't want to give away the ending, but then there's like
Mhm.
an event at the end that kind of rounds it out, and so even though it's not like tense action movie plot moving forward, it's all the interesting things, and I
Mhm.
think that that's something that makes a good plot is not necessarily showing the everyday, but why this day matters and why you showed it to me,
Yeah.
you know? And in that movie that I watched, it was just the day to day of these 3 different women. And it was just so bizarre. I'm like, it was just everyday life. And it's like, uh,
But
I,
not interesting life.
I have everyday life, like I know what it's like to have to pay the phone bill or pick out stuff for a house that you're building. Like that's not the
Mhm.
interesting stuff. So anyway, I think that for an interesting plot, it needs to be a reason why you're telling us that part of the
Mhm.
plot if it's not like an action of this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and we save the world because those plots
The end.
definitely move faster. Yeah.
Right. I think ultimately plot and like I feel like ultimately writing always like it always comes back to your character, why we should care, why were they important, why the story being told through them is it's them and not anyone else. And so when you're writing your plot, the good way to keep in like so when you're writing plot, you want to go in the mindset of like I need something that my character or my reader won't put down. And a
Right.
good way to do that is to make your character relatable to your reader, which sounds kind of selfish and almost impossible at times because how are you going to write one person for all of your readers? But humans, we're social creatures. We want to see ourselves and our own problems reflected in characters.
Hmm.
And you can do that in a lot of different ways. So the book Fourth Wing, for example, it opens up with our main character Violet. She's walking across a parapet, which is this super teeny tiny rocky bridge between two mountains, and it's relatable in the sense that no, we've not all had to walk this crazy mountain pass, but we've all probably done something a little weird, a little dangerous, a little uncomfortable to please a parent. And so that's that relatability we see on that very first page that keeps you turning, because otherwise like why would I care if this girl falls, we have nothing in common, we're like oh we're both trying to please our crazy mom. um,
Well, and that goes into another piece, which is you have to empathize with your character, right? Like,
exactly.
do you care if that character falls? You have to be intrigued enough to see what happens, and that means that your plot has to impact your character in such a way that it influences their actions, their decisions, and then their ultimate path. So if we think about like a really drastic example of a room filling up with water,
Mm-hmm.
how does your main character react? A character that's flat, you're like, okay, this room is filling up with water. That character may or may not die. Who cares, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if I tell you that the door is locked? It's jammed. What if it's not water? What if it's a rising flood? What if your character can't swim? What if your character is stuck in that room and they have a loved one in another room that they can't get to? Those are all stakes that are influencing and making your plot more unput downable. I know that's not
Mm-hmm.
really a word.
It is here.
It's what makes your plot interesting or the stakes. Why does it matter?
Yeah, so the best way to write your plot again is to make that character relatable, have these stakes that are you like you almost feel like you won't like you can't move forward until you know what happens next. And so
Yes.
that's why having these stakes are really important. And the best way to make your stakes is to incorporate all these levels of tension that we've discussed in previous episodes.
Right.
So whether it be your character is trapped, like the room filling up with water, or a ticking time clock and the room filling up with water. So just any obstacles, those are your key to a good plot, is a strong or well thought of character so they're not flat, and then all these obstacles.
Well, and like, so one of the things that drives me crazy, um, that I feel like I could make an entire like reel about tech, things that make Crystal crazy, is when your character does something that no like reasonably intelligent person would do.
Yes, and
That, go ahead, tell me.
it's convenient in the moment. I've fallen victim to it, but like if your reader can be like, "That's the dumbest," no one would think to do that. Like you've either needed to backtrack enough to rationalize why that character is doing it, or make sure you're not just doing it because it's convenient for the plot. Like, well, I need them stuck in a well. Like, but you
Yeah.
just told me they're a star athlete. They should be able to climb out.
Well, or
Oh,
or like, why are they going down into the well?
yeah,
Like, watch me go into the well so I can show you that I can climb back out, and also I can't, and also those people leave. Like just
yeah.
there was this one time that my sister and I were in New Zealand, and we were on the black sand shores of the beach. I think Piha, I think is where we were.
Mhm.
But anyway, we were climbing rocks and getting all the way around to this like little inlet. And I'm watching the tide go up. And I'm like, Justine, we got to get out of here. Like the tide is coming in. And she was like, oh, just go a little bit further. And I was like, no, this is what people do in books that drive me crazy. We're going to get stuck out here and have to go around the north side. And like, of course, we're in a foreign country and our car is all the way on the south side. And I don't know how we're going
Yeah.
to get back to it. And so, anyway, eventually we did go back over before the tide came in. But that's the kind of thing where it's like, you need to have some rational part of your brain going, no, I'm going to get stuck here and look at all of the consequences of doing
Yeah.
this dumb action. So it's like those horror movies where like you hear a sound and somebody goes in the basement. I'm like, no,
Oh no, you call the police
nobody
and you leave.
does that.
Oh my gosh.
Except for me at writing retreat when there's a hole
Oh,
in the ground.
but you weren't alone. You had flashlights. We were all there.
I was not alone and it was just a hologram, but it was very funny how very nervous that made our friend.
Get out of the hole. Get out of the hole. It's good times. We hinted at it slightly, and I just want to reiterate: don't write your plot and your character for convenience sake. So like you,
Yes.
so like let's like an example I've used before is like your character is fighting a monster, and suddenly they pull out a pocket knife. Like where'd they get the pocket knife? So a chapter beforehand, maybe they've used that knife to cut an apple. So the same object used in a different type of situation. And so that way it's just more believable for your character to have this item they need or to have this knowledge that they have to in order to progress in the story. So
But I would jump on that and say not just that they cut the apple with it, but that they
mhm,
always carry that pocket knife. It needs to
yeah,
be part of their character.
yeah,
Because if you just have them conveniently find things that they're going to need two chapters later, that's called letting your plot drive your story rather than your story driving your plot. And so
mhm,
you have to do more than just come up with reasons of why they have that pocket knife. You have to make it part of their character. Otherwise, they're going to have to figure out how to do this without a pocket knife.
yeah, yeah, and like as a pantser, this is my this gets me in the butt all the time. So like after I write the draft, I have to go back and like every key moment, every key element, I'm like, okay, how do we stretch this towards the beginning more? And so it's just really knowing like where the plot would be weak if this thing was gone. And so like just yeah,
Well,
oh,
and
I
to be
wish I had better
fair,
words for things, but
I'm a plotter and I have to do that. And I'm like, okay, how do I make it where, she has shoes, right? Like
mhm,
for some reason she's outside and she's in bed. Like there's no reason for her to put on shoes. But she maybe she has to run. Like
mhm,
what plausible reason? And this is a big thing about plot is it has to be plausible. What plausible reason does that person have to have that? And it can't just be, well, I've done that in real life or I've seen that in real life. It
yeah.
has to feel believable. It has to feel like something that somebody would do and not just like a magical surprise accident.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And speaking of plausible, we're gonna shift gears to what makes a super, super good plot, and that's having a super good plot twist.
Yeah.
So you don't like as avid readers, as writers, I feel like Crystal and I and you at home, you might fall into this trap of like you start guessing too early what's happening because you as a writer, you as a reader can kind of see those scenes or those signs
Yes.
earlier on. Um,
Yes.
but so a plot twist is when your plot's going one way and then it shifts and goes the other way, and the goal of that is to surprise your reader, subvert their expectations,
Yeah.
and just kind of catch them. And a good way to write a good plot twist is it has to be plausible. The twist has to make sense. It can't just and then dinosaurs appear. Like no, it has to be a surprise. And like I mentioned, that can be harder as avid readers, as avid writers. So just as you're writing it, if it's not super, super surprising to you, you might just have to get a second opinion on it because you do know what's happening. You may have seen it before.
Yeah.
And then the plot twist should also be foreshadowed in a way. That way it your reader could guess it and it feels rewarding that they guessed correctly without it being too easy. And that foreshadowing goes into play with the plausibility.
Or you put a bunch of things in to make it all make sense. So one of my
Yeah.
like absolute favorite books is My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You That She's Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's such a great Frederick Bachman book. But I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. So if you want to read this, skip past this part. But in the book, there is a woman, Britt Marie, and she's the worst. She's like one of those people that you don't want on your HOA. Like somebody puts like she puts up signs, like thanks, building management, even though she's
Oh.
not a manager. And like she's got this awful husband and he treats her very poorly, but all she is obsessed about like making his day early, like easier.
Mhm.
You get all the way to the end, and this extremely dislikable character becomes like just understandable. It's a huge twist. I did not see it coming, and that's actually really rare for me in general. Even before I became a writer, I was like
Yeah.
very I guess in tune with like, oh, that's a foreshadowing, like, oh, that's a red herring kind of thing. And so like all the things leading up to her big reveal of just like she's had a really hard life and she's been doing all of this stuff to try and not just make things better for herself, but also, she's done good things for people in the building.
Yeah.
And so the big thing was that it was plausible. Like every single thing that had happened beforehand, you just saw it in a slightly different light.
Yeah.
So I love the way that he did it. It was a total surprise and it was definitely plausible, because everybody's the hero of their own story. And I loved
Right.
Britt Marie even got her own book. It's called Britt Marie
Oh.
Was Here. And I did read it. And I don't think I would have liked it if I hadn't
Mhm.
read My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You That She's Sorry
Yeah.
first.
Oh.
So anyway, it's not just plot twist. It could even be like a character twist. Somebody that you, yeah,
Yeah.
go
That's a
ahead.
great example of like it might not just be dinosaurs, it might just be a change of character that you're not expecting. So the plot twist can be as big and as small as you need it to be, as you want it to be.
I I really love the idea of just like dinosaurs appearing. There's a book called 10,000 Doors of January, written by Alex Harrow.
Mhm.
Again, spoiler. So if you don't want to hear these things, you got to skip past. But 135 pages into the book, vampires. No joke. Like, like there's this like travel between worlds and interesting, and there's doors that you can go through and go into these other worlds. And then at like 135 pages in, now we've got vampires. And I'm
Wait,
like,
were they
what?
behind their own door, or were they just suddenly in like the
You just
main?
found out that the antagonists that she's been running from this whole time were actually vampires.
Okay.
It was, it wasn't like it was not plausible, but it was just like
Mhm.
such a good twist that I was like, oh my gosh, this book has vampires.
Just so unexpected.
Okay, so another thing with plot is that there's two types of plot events. There's the uncontrollable plot events, like a flood happening, where your character doesn't really have control and they have to
Mhm.
react to it. And then there's controllable plot events, which are things like that character choosing to get on a plane and just abandon everything. Like they're going to
Yeah.
quit their job and leave their family and they're going to go. But in both cases, your character has to be completely relevant to the story. If your character wasn't there, could the story still occur? And the biggest one of that is the example of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where if you take Indiana Jones out of the story, the Nazis still open the Ark, they still all die, and the plot still ends the same. So, just keeping that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want
Yeah.
to play a game?
Yes. So for our listeners at home, grab your pens and papers. Crystal and I are going to do a new segment. It's this or that relating to the plot episode.
Yep.
So, Crystal, this or that, would you rather do an external plot? So something like end of the world, aliens are attacking, or an internal plot like navigating a divorce or deciding what school you're going to send your kid to?
I am definitely an external plot person. I like big stakes that
Mhm.
not just impact my character. What about you?
Same. Give me those big stakes, those world ending, and it's important when you do those world ending is your character needs to have a stake other than just like, well, this is my world. Like they should like,
Mm.
if the world ends, I can't open my bakery. Like something super personal and
And
something super.
dinosaurs are
And
coming.
dinosaurs are coming. My bread won't rise.
Okay, so the next one's for you, Jordan. Do you like global stakes, which I think you kind of just answered this. If you don't get this thing, the world ends, right? Like if I don't get the sword, the world ends.
Mhm.
Versus internal stakes, like if I don't complete this project, I won't get a promotion or whatever. So are you more global or individual stakes?
I'm actually more individual, just in that way. Like it feels more fulfilling for my characters. Like, yeah, it's cool they save the world, but like they got to open that bread shop they've been dreaming of. So it just feels more personal. It feels more rewarding for me when my characters can achieve those individual stakes or
Yeah.
achieve those stakes. But what about you?
It depends on the book I'm reading.
Oh, I didn't know
If
that was an
if it's a
option.
romance book that I'm reading, I always want it to be individual stakes. I always want
Mm,
it to be something that feels very internal and personal. If I'm reading something like a fantasy or the world ending, I like the global stakes. Like,
yeah.
what happens to everybody if we don't do this thing?
And that fits like genre expectations also. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna assume the world's gonna end in a fun summer rom-com book.
Well,
Or
but
hopefully not.
romanticy, right? That
Oh,
is
right.
romance plus that, right?
So would you like to deal with a real world antagonist, someone you're like on the same playing field, or a supernatural antagonist, so like a ghost or a demon in the walls?
Oh gosh. So it depends again on the book I'm reading. I prefer to read books with real world antagonists, real
Mhm.
bad guys that can be defeated. Supernatural stuff scares me.
Right.
Like the clown doll is alive, the house is alive,
Oh,
there's ghosts that are coming out of the wall and you can't see them. Oh gosh, no.
yeah, no, no, no. Ooh,
What about you? Do you prefer a real world antagonist or a supernatural antagonist?
definitely a real world antagonist for like that same reason. Like I feel like I could punch a burglar. I could not punch a ghost.
Yes. Like, if I can't see it coming, how do you fight
Yeah.
that?
Or my husband, he's a big horror buff, and he prefers like supernatural movies in the sense of like because like there's a movie series called Wrong Turn where like you take the wrong turn
Oh,
and you
no,
end up
I've seen
yeah,
it.
okay, all right, it's terrifying, and he doesn't like those movies because they could happen versus the supernatural where they couldn't happen, and I'm like the exact opposite, like yeah, but
Yeah.
like you could fight your way out of that maybe.
Yes. Yes. Or the Saw movies.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is just goofy. I don't even care about that.
I just all right. I've
All
said it
right.
before. I'm a huge scaredy cat. I'd like to not punch any ghost.
Same, 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 same. Although I do feel like if you write a horror novel that's more like um oh gosh. The Upside Down. What am I thinking of?
Oh, Stranger
Supernatural.
Things. Stranger
Stranger
Things.
Things. Thank you. Those are horrors, but I wasn't ever scared in it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
If you can write it that way where it's
that
not
always
scary
felt
to
more
me,
like sci-fi than horror to me.
to me too. To me
Mhm.
too. It felt like sci-fi gore.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. Last one. Jordan, do you like your hero to be a likable, does the right thing all the time, or do you like your hero to be more of that anti-hero, where you're not really sure what they're gonna do?
So I know Nightwing's on my wall right here, but I am an anti-hero girl, 100% through and through. They're just so cool. What
Oh,
about you? Oh, and if you meet me in real life, you'll hear me say sometimes you need a villain to do the hero's job. That's because like the hero will always try like we have to save everyone. Everyone's got to be happy and nice, and the villain will be like, this is the outcome we need. Let me take care of it.
yeah.
So an anti-hero can make those tough calls. All
Well,
right.
if I'm playing D&D, I am lawful good all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Save all the villagers, give all the money
Mm-hmm.
away, like that is who I am. But if I'm reading it or watching it, I am definitely an anti-hero kind of person. I feel
Yeah.
like those characters are more interesting, even though I
Yeah.
personally am not.
They're just all the layers are like a big old club sandwich.
Well, and it just feels like amazing to see somebody who's so grumpy and like awful being like, "Oh, I guess I'm gonna save you."
I'll
Um,
save the day.
yeah, like
Oh, and they've always had
I
the
just
best one-liners.
oh my gosh. Well, like another Frederick Bachman book, A Man Called Uva. This
Ooh.
guy is spoiler. He lost his wife to cancer, and he was forced into retirement, and he's just this grumpy old man, and all he wants to do is join his wife, right? Like he just wants to die.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's grumpy and like telling people off, and just I don't know, like basically Dennis the Menace's neighborhood, and. But every time somebody needs help, he like grumbles and goes over and be like, "Oh, I guess I'm going to
Oh,
help you. I'll take you to the hospital or whatever. Oh, I guess I'll teach you how to drive." And
yeah.
so eventually, like he's still this grumpy guy, but he ends up getting this whole family. And like he's like I don't know, that is my absolute ultimate favorite Frederick Bachman book.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely the anti-hero. I just love
So
him.
so cute. Oh, reminds me like Grandpa from Up or
Oh my,
Carl from Up.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Also love Up. Um, okay, well, that I'm sorry for going so long, but that was a lot of fun doing that game and kind
Yeah.
of doing the comparison. So that's all the time we have for this episode of Everyday Writers. And just don't forget, your plot cannot be something your character. Let's try this again. Your plot cannot be something your character can just walk away from. It requires them to be ingrained.
And make sure you're raising the stakes every chance you get.
And your character needs to move the plot, not just react to it.
Join us next month where we'll be discussing overcoming that query burnout. And if you love what you hear on Everyday Writers, don't forget to click that subscribe button and give Crystal and I a follow over on Instagram.
And don't forget, every day is a good day to write. See you next time.
Bye. Oh.